One ordinary gorilla suddenly grows into a monster taller than buildings. And somehow, that's not even the biggest creature in this movie. Within hours, a wolf the size of a jet starts flying through the air, while a crocodile evolves into a walking apocalypse. Every bullet, missile, and tank fails to stop them, and an entire city is about to be wiped off the map. The only person these monsters still recognize is the man who raised the gorilla. But can one friendship stop the end of a city? This is Rampage. On a quiet morning, Davis Okoye is doing what he does best, taking care of George, an extraordinarily gentle albino gorilla who treats Davis like family. Davis is a former U.S. Army medic turned primatologist, big, blunt, and all heart. The kind of guy whose idea of problem solving is equal parts calm patience and a good smack of common sense. George is smarter than most people give him credit for. He's selective with his affection, stubborn, and absolutely loyal. Their bond is the emotional anchor of the whole story, and honestly, it's the reason you care when the world starts melting down around them. Things go south fast when a dangerous genetic experiment, built to edit DNA and cure disease, is stolen and trafficked on the black market. I won't bore you with lab jargon, just know that corporate greed and sloppy ethics make a terrible cocktail when it comes to experimental biology. That stolen pathogen gets out in the wild, and, in a matter of scenes, 3 animals, George, a giant wolf, and a massive crocodilian creature, are exposed and begin mutating, growing into towering, aggressive versions of themselves. The movie wastes no time moving from small domestic grief to full-scale disaster, and you can feel the stakes climbing as Davis watches the first signs of change in George with growing horror. Davis doesn't play the helpless friend role. When George is taken by authorities for study, a tense, heartbreaking scene where Davis has to stand by, you can see the panic behind his calm. He teams up with Dr. Kate Caldwell, a brilliant and morally steadfast geneticist who realizes what she's facing. Kate's the kind of scientist you'd root for. She knows the science, sees the ethics, and refuses to let the corporate suits sweep anything under the rug. Together, they try to piece the mystery together. How did this rogue pathogen escape? Who's profiting? And what on earth do you do when 3 gigantic predators decide to go for a walk through civilization? The plot moves into procedure mode from there. The military and government show up, which is never reassuring in monster movies, and so begins the bureaucratic response, containment protocols, evacuation attempts, and people who respond to fear by wanting to obliterate the problem rather than fix it. That puts the film firmly in classic action territory. The specialists who know better, Davis and Kate, versus the powers that be who want to bomb the mess away. Meanwhile, the 3 marauding beasts leave a trail of destruction across the landscape. And because you don't get giant monsters politely patrolling suburbs, there are a lot of collapsing buildings, terrified civilians, and sequences that push the film's effects team into overdrive. The interesting twist is that George is not just another monster brain snap. Even as he grows larger and more erratic, there are flashes where his bond with Davis cuts through. Moments when George looks at Davis the way a friend looks at you, after you've been through a hard day together. That emotional thread gives Davis a personal stake. He isn't trying to save the world abstractly, he's trying to save his friend. Kate provides the scientific urgency. She's racing to understand how the genetic edits cause size and rage, and whether an antidote or suppressant could reverse the process. They're trying to be smart instead of violent, which sets them apart from the generals who want to nuke the problem out of existence. Of course, Rampage doesn't skimp on spectacle. As the animals head for the city, yes, Chicago plays a big role. The movie shifts into big set-piece mode. You get massive chases, vehicles flipping for effect's sake, helicopters trying to outmaneuver beasts that laugh in the face of rotors, and 1 or 2 sequences that wonderfully lean into the ridiculousness of giant animals smashing through landmarks. The wolf and the crocodilian become antagonists in their own right, each with its own brand of chaos. The wolf is feral and fast, hitting trains and city streets like a battering ram. The croc is stealthy and lethal, turning waterways and underpasses into nightmares. Meanwhile, George, who is the film's moral center, struggles with the infection's effect on his cognition. He grows stronger, but angrier, and the filmmakers handle his moments of confusion with surprising tenderness. Davis and Kate's plan is improvised and messy in the best way. There's a montage of them figuring things out, sneaking into labs, arguing with generals, assembling a makeshift solution, and that's the part of the movie where the human chemistry pays off. Kate is cool and methodical, Davis is blunt and improvisational, and their clashing approaches make them a decent odd couple team. They recruit military assets reluctantly, and along the way a few supporting players provide help, comic relief, or cannon fodder. The movie doesn't bother maintaining any deep mystery about who's right. It's clear where your loyalties should lie. You want a cure, not a carpet bomb. The emotional core keeps pulling the action back to a manageable human scale. There's a sequence where Davis gets close to George, tries to remind him of their bond, and for a beat you think maybe the whole thing can be solved by friendship and a gentle rub on the shoulder. That's cute, but not the whole answer. The pathogen is a physical problem that needs a physical fix. Kate works feverishly to create an antidote or suppressant, but getting it into these massive animals proves to be less laboratory drama and more improvisational heroics. Cue a barrage of action movie solutions, daring insertions from helicopters, zip lines, and one of those "we'll try anything that's slightly insane but plausible" plans that, if nothing else, makes for a thrilling watch. There's also a moral subplot about corporate culpability. The company responsible for the experiment and the executives who were more interested in profit than safety are portrayed as slick and detached, the kind of villains who sign off on risky trials because they're counting the revenue. The film uses that to justify a public interest angle. This isn't just animals gone wild, it's a consequence of human greed and hubris. You get courtroom-adjacent lines and press conferences that remind you the problem is partly man-made, which is a welcome reminder in a movie that could have easily been only about CGI carnage. As the beasts converge on the city, the final third leans hard into the spectacle. There are huge sequences where the city evacuates around them, first responders get overwhelmed, and Davis has to make split-second choices that blur the line between saving innocents and protecting his friend. He gets himself into more than one dangerous situation. There's a real sense of sacrifice in how he keeps putting himself between George and anything that might kill him. The military's approach turns increasingly violent and reckless, which creates tension because their actions sometimes make the situation worse. That's the movie saying, more or less, if your solution is indiscriminate violence, you might be helping the problem. I'll spare you a beat-by-beat, blow-by-blow of every explosion, but the climax resolves on two fronts: science and humanity. Kate manages to synthesize a countermeasure that can blunt the mutation's effects, and Davis, because of his bond with George, is the essential component to getting it to him. There's a sequence full of hand-to-hand intensity, if you can call it that, when one party is a 30-foot ape, and it's as much about trust as it is about logistics. The antidote gets administered, not without a cost, and you get the payoff of George's moments of clarity returning. He's still huge, and the damage already done can't be fully erased, but the creature who emerges on the other side of the crisis is more himself than monster. It's a satisfying emotional hit to see Davis and George find each other again amid the rubble. The film doesn't end on a purely neat note. There are consequences. The city is scarred, the corporate villains face the fallout, and the world has to reckon with a technology that proved too dangerous in greedy hands. Davis and Kate survive, their relationship forged in the fire of crisis. There's a sense of weary hope as they contemplate what's next. George, while no longer a rampaging behemoth, is different now. How you interpret the ending depends on how you feel about the movie's emotional arc. If you came for spectacle, the film gives it to you in spades. If you came for heart, the relationship between Davis and George carries the movie when the CGI is done. A few honest notes. The plot leans on familiar action beats, and sometimes trades depth for momentum. Characters outside the main trio don't always get full arcs, and the film's satirical jabs at corporate greed and governmental overreaction are sometimes broad. But what works is precision. The movie knows its strengths, leans into Dwayne Johnson's charisma, and keeps the emotional core front and center.